Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we're looking into the disappearance of Leah Toby Roberts. And this is the Charlie Project where you can donate. And you can, if you have a missing loved one that you would like to report missing that's not on here, maybe you could contact them about it. She went missing in March of 2000, Whatcom County, Washington. She was 5'6", 130 pounds, only 23 years old. She had 14-karat gold earrings with 3-carat ruby, 0.3-carat ruby stones, and 3 rings on her right hand, including a 14-karat white gold ring set with a 0.45-carat emerald-cut diamond flanked by 2.07-carat Baquette diamonds. I don't know how to pronounce it, but maybe that would help find her. And then it has her Jeep that was accounted for. Sandy blonde hair, blue eyes. She had a surgical scar on her right hip. She has a metal rod inside the entire length of her femur as a result of previous injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Roberts has a beauty mark above the upper corner of her right lip. Her ears are pierced and she has dimples. Roberts is a vegetarian. What is her first name? Leah Roberts. Anyway, Leah has a beauty mark. Her ears are pierced. Leah is a vegetarian and she smokes cigarettes. She has a strong southern accent and speaks fluent Spanish. Okay, Leah's loved one said she was interested in learning more about her spirituality in 2000. She was coping with the deaths of both of her parents and had been seriously injured in an automobile accident several years prior to disappearance. She dropped out of college during her senior year in North Carolina and spent most of her time at Cup of Joe Coffee House in the city. She wrote poetry and journal entries during the day and was intrigued with the writings of Jack Kerouac. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that right, the 1950s beatnik author. One of her favorite novels was Dharma Bums, which was set in the Whatcom County, Washington area. She loved traveling and set out for the Northwest United States March 9, 2000. She did not share her plans with her loved ones, but did leave a note for her roommate. She stated in the letter that she was not suicidal and mentioned her fascination with his writings. She took her kitten and drove her white Jeep. There's a license plate number. The vehicle was discovered wrecked and abandoned on a log road in Whatcom County, Washington on March 18, 2000, 9 days after Roberts left North Carolina. The Jeep was located near an embankment off of Mount Baker Highway at the foot of the Cascade Mountains, which is approximately 85 miles north of Seattle, Washington. Authorities discovered a fuel purchase receipt dated during the early morning hours of March 13 from Brooks, Oregon, inside her vehicle. A ticket stub for March 13th showed a showing of the film American Beauty at the theater in Bellis Mall in Bellingham, Washington was also recovered. Cat food was found inside the Jeep as well. Her guitar, CDs, checkbook were all scattered near the scene. $2,500 was tucked inside a pair of her pants. But apparently she wasn't wearing those pants. See, I don't know, that doesn't sound right to me because you're going to have the money in the pants you're wearing, not inside of a different pair of pants. Blankets had been placed over the vehicle's broken windows, signaling that someone had sought protection from the elements. There was no sign of Roberts on her or her kitten at the scene, and no evidence of foul play was discovered. See, I don't know about that. A witness told authorities that he and his wife believed they saw her at a Texaco gas station in Everett, Washington, shortly after her vehicle was found abandoned. The man said that the woman he saw appeared to be disoriented and did not recall her identity, but he terminated his conversation with investigators before he could provide additional details. I mean, to me, that right there sounds suspicious, like he's in a hurry to get off the phone. Like, to me that sounds suspicious. Like, I don't know, it sounds suspicious, very suspicious that he would do that part of it makes me think authorities believe his sighting was valid though, but I don't, and that the man panicked during the phone call for undetermined reasons. If he panicked, it's probably because he's not being honest and he doesn't have more information to give and he hasn't thought that much about it and he wants to get off the phone and go in case they're coming there to talk to him. That's what I would think, but that's just me. There are several theories as to what may have happened to Roberts. Investigators believe that she may have headed towards Mount Baker highway after her accident was probably picked up by a passing motorist. She may have suffered injuries during the wreck and could have been disoriented, as the witness stated, as a result of her condition. Some people have speculated that an unknown individual was driving her vehicle at the time of the accident, and that foul play may have been involved in her disappearance, like they wrecked it on purpose. And it says there's little evidence to support any theory regarding her whereabouts. So let's see what they say on Wikipedia. It says March 18, 2000, joggers along a road reported seeing the wrecked vehicle at the bottom of the embankment. You can pause it and read it if you want to. Investigating deputy sheriffs found the Jeep. They traced it to Leah Roberts, who had abruptly left her home 9 days earlier. A man called police claiming that his wife had seen Roberts. But he may not even have had a wife. In an Everett gas station in a disoriented state shortly after the car was found, her whereabouts remain unknown. In the preceding years, Robert's disappearance, both of her parents had died. She had survived serious injuries from a car accident, so I know she's going to be a really careful driver now. Her friends and siblings have said that this had left her pondering spiritual issues and questioning the direction of her life. She dropped out of the university only months before graduation and began spending much of her time in a local coffee house, often writing poetry in her journal. A note that she left behind at her home suggested she had taken inspiration from the work of Jack Kerouac, particularly the novel Dharma Bums, which has scenes set at Desolation Peak near where the car was found. She had also left money for her housemate to cover expenses while she was gone, suggested she expected to return in the space of a month ago. Investigators have focused on the possible contradictory evidence found in her car. Documents inside suggested she had reached Bellingham, Washington by March 13, 5 days before the car was found. Early suspicions that the vehicle was unoccupied when it crashed, which might suggest that it had been wrecked intentionally, were confirmed when the car's started motor was examined several years later and found to have been tampered with. Blankets hung across the car's window might suggest it had been used as a shelter after the crash. Her personal belongings were found scattered near the scene, but robbery did not seem likely as money and jewelry were among them. Oh, see, so the guy that called that said he saw her was probably full of it and he was afraid, and that's why he got off the phone. And that's just my personal opinion as a possibility. It doesn't mean it's fact. Although the case has been featured on the television show Unsolved Mysteries and Disappeared, few leads have emerged. In the summer of 2005, volunteers from the North Carolina Missing Persons Awareness Group organized a caravan across the country to raise awareness for Leah's case and others that has since become an annual event. So it sounds like something happened to her, and I don't know if it happened before the Oregon receipt or not. Leah Toby Roberts was born in 1976, the youngest of 3 children. So this talks about her background, which I don't want to read, but you can read. It says she had a degree in Spanish and anthropology, almost complete. She dropped out of school, and about the coffee houses. So I'm going to skip ahead, and you can pause that and read it if you want it. And then it talks about her disappearance. Let's see, Leah and Nicole agreed to do some baby... Okay, on the morning, March 9th, Leah talked on the phone with Kara about possible future plans. They made no commitments, but Kara recalls the conversation, ending with the understanding that the two would be seeing each other in some fashion in the near future. Later in the afternoon, they had agreed to do some babysitting the next day. The roommate went out to her job and returned later, at which point she noticed her Jeep was not there, nor Leah herself. She thought nothing of it, as Leah had been coming and going unpredictable intervals since she dropped out of school and living off of her inheritance at the time, and no need to report a job. However, she was not at the babysitting appointment the next day and had not returned home by its end. By the end of the following day, March 11th, not only was Leah still absent, but friends and family who had expected to see her had been calling the house trying to find her. On Monday, March 13th, Kara reported her missing to the Durham police. On March 14th, Kara, along with Leah's roommate Nicole, searched Leah's room. A significant amount of Leah's clothes were missing, suggesting a planned lengthy absence. She seemed to have taken her cat with her as well. She left a note, "I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite." She reassured her sister and friends and mentioned that author. Along with the note, she had bundled some cash, approximately a month's worth of her share of rent and expenses, and suggested she would be returning. The note was illustrated with a drawing of the Cheshire Cat's grin. Okay, so since Kara still had the power of attorney over Leah's bank account, she was able to look at her sister's financial records. She discovered she had withdrawn several $1,000s on the afternoon of March 9th and then used her debit card to pay for a motel room near Memphis, Tennessee. Later transactions were purchases of gas or food. Their location suggesting Leah was traveling west along I-40 and then north on I-5 when she reached I-40's western end of California. I would think she would have called her. After a gas purchase shortly after midnight on the morning of March 13th in Brooks, Oregon, all activity on Leah's accounts ended. To understand why her sister was headed to the Pacific Northwest, Kara and Susie Smith, Leah's best friend, went to the coffee shops, and there they found Janine Quiller, with whom Leah had discussed Kerouac's works. The two had been particularly struck by the novel, but I don't know if she told her that she was going there or not. Hold on. She had expressed interest in seeing that area for herself. Kara was believed to have discovered her sister's probable objective. Leah's account showed no new activity, but Kara had no reason to believe that something unfortunate had occurred. Kara expected that Leah would call her on March 18th to wish her a happy 26th birthday. So, yes, she would have called. But instead, she received a note from the sheriff's office telling her to call one of her their counterparts in Whatcom County office in Bellingham, Washington. She then learned earlier that day Leah's Jeep had been discovered in a remote forest, but Leah herself was not present. Early that morning in Washington, a couple jogging, they noticed her vehicle. A short distance south of the Canada border, had noticed articles of clothing at the side of the road next to the slight curve at the top of the slope. Some had been tied to the trees and branches at the roadside. In the woods below, at the bottom of the steep embankment, was Leah's Jeep, severely damaged. From the path that the car had taken through the trees and the extent to which the car and trees had been damaged, investigators determined that the Jeep had been traveling nearly 40 miles an hour when it went off the road and down the slope. But they said before that they noticed that it had been intentional, that she didn't do it. The contents of the vehicle were tossed around inside, consistent with multiple rollover, yet there was no blood or other signs of injury to an occupant, such as shattered marks on glass or stretching of the seatbelt or anything that probably would have occurred had there been a driver and or passenger. It seemed possible that no one had been in the Jeep when it crashed, suggesting the accident might have been staged or planned. And then that guy calls and says that his wife had seen her and she was disoriented, which now we know. Well, we don't know, but I believe that it was BS. However, blankets and pillows were hung inside the window, suggesting that it had been used as a shelter after being wrecked. Yeah, he staged the whole thing. Leah's passport, checkbook, driver's license, clothes, guitar, CDs, and other belongings were found scattered in surrounding woods. Bits of cat food and small cat carrier were found in the vehicle, confirming that she had taken her cat on the trip with her, although the cat had never been found. However, valuables such as $2,500 in cash in a pants pocket and jewelry were also left behind, suggesting that robbery had not been the reason for the accident. So they flew to Bellingham to assist investigators. They visited the crash site and, with the assistance of the sheriff's office, created a flyer that they posted around town. They went into businesses that Leah may have visited and questioned owners and customers. Among Leah's belongings, they found a box of mementos from the trip that provided a clue that established more clearly when Leah had arrived in Whatcom County. A ticket stub from a showing of American Beauty at the theaters in the mall. This suggested that Leah might have spent a few hours in the city after having arrived at the beginning of the day following the 5 to 6 hour drive from where she bought gas in Oregon. Near the theater was the mall's only sit-down restaurant where Heath and Kara believed that Leah might have gone for a meal. Police were led to two customers, both men, who not only recalled her, but had sat on each side of her at the restaurant's counter that day. Why would they sit on each side of her instead of next to each other? Talking about Kirak and her plans. One of the men claimed that she had left with a third man. That's what they always say, isn't it? They always say there was somebody else, whom he heard her call Barry and provided a description for a police sketch of the man. However, neither the man nor any other customer who had been in the restaurant at that time could corroborate the third man's existence. At a police garage to which, and that's, I wonder if one of those two men is the one who called and said that his wife saw a disoriented woman after they staged the accident. At a police garage to which it had been towed, investigators continued to examine the Jeep, joined by the FBI, who had become involved because Leah had crossed state lines. Two aspects of the evidence that they developed suggested to them that Leah had been the victim of a crime. First, the amount of money found in her pants suggested that she had spent very little in Bellingham, less than could be expected if she had been in the city for several days. Second, see? And that's what I'm talking about, something about the Oregon gas receipt, too. Second, under a floor mat, they found Leah's mother's engagement ring, which Leah wore constantly. Her friends in North Carolina said she had treasured it for the connection it offered to her late mother, and that she would never have taken it off voluntarily unless she, she didn't completely forget who she was. She may have taken it off to leave a clue to let them know that something bad happened to her. Heath and Kara returned to North Carolina after 4 days because there's two men on both sides of her. I wonder if they got in the car with her and took her and did something, and maybe she hid the ring under there. Heath and Kara returned to North Carolina after 4 days working on the theory that Leah might have been injured in the accident and wandered off, but she wasn't. Police spent 2 weeks in April searching with help from dogs and helicopters the area that Leah may have possibly covered if she had left the scene of the crash. They found no trace of her. Security camera footage from the gas station at which she stopped in Oregon showed her alone and apparently in good condition, although several times she peered out into the parking lot while waiting for her transaction to be completed, an area not covered by the cameras, like there was somebody else there. This could suggest a traveling companion, perhaps the Barry with whom her... Yeah, they wouldn't have been sitting on both, one of them on each side of her. If there was a Barry there, he would have been sitting there with her. If she had a companion, and she probably would have sat at a table and not the bar, but he would have been there, sitting there, eating with her. A companion that claimed she had left, but had a man been with her, investigators believe that he did not travel in her car. See, I don't know. I don't believe that. A few days after the Jeep was discovered, a man called the sheriff to report a sighting with Leah. He claimed his wife had seen Leah, disoriented and confused, wandering around a gas station in Everett, closer to Seattle. That's to throw them off. After disclosing this information, he seemed to panic and hung up before identifying himself, so the other guy wouldn't get mad at him, maybe, or something. I don't know. Police nevertheless considered the tip credible. It might have been the last sighting of Leah, but I don't consider it credible now. In 2001, the Lifetime series Unsolved Mysteries ran a segment on the case that generated some new tips for investigators and reports that Leah had been sighted elsewhere in the U.S., but nothing else that proved credible. Maybe somebody looked like her. Back in North Carolina, Kara contacted Monica Carlson, a Wilmington woman who had helped other families find missing loved ones after the case had gone officially cold. Carlson, with the help of a network of volunteers called Community United Efforts, had specialized in keeping cases alive in the media, for which official efforts had exhausted all leads. In 2005, on the 4th anniversary of Leah's disappearance, I don't know if that's Carlson or Kaysen, organized a caravan across the country following Leah's route west to Bellingham to raise awareness about Leah's unsolved case and those of other missing persons. This has since become an annual event. She and Kara appeared on CNN's Larry King's Live in 2005. I really don't know how I would have made it through the past 5 years without her, Kara told the host. We're just trying to, keep Leah's face out there as much as possible. After the initial investigation concluded, Kara asked the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office to keep Leah's car in case more clues turned up over the years. This decision bore fruit in 2006 when Mark Joseph, the detective who had originally investigated the case, passed his files on to two younger detectives. Reviewing the case, one of the detectives noticed that the car and its contents had not been fully processed for evidence, when it was originally brought in, so the two decided to finish the job. As no one had looked under the Jeep's hood during the initial investigation, the detectives pried it open and found that a wire had been cut, allowing the car to accelerate without anyone having to press the gas pedal, confirming early suspicions that no one had been in the car when it left the road, and thus had been purposely wrecked. To cover whatever they did to her, the detectives found a fingerprint under the hood and some male DNA on an article of Leah's clothing. This led them back to the man who had claimed Leah left the Bellis Fair restaurant with a third man she called Barry, whom only the second man had reported seeing. That man had worked as a mechanic and had a military background, further raising the detective's suspicions. He had also moved to Canada in the interim, complicating and lengthening an effort to get fingerprints and DNA from him. By the time that Investigation Discovery aired an episode on the case in 2011, the fingerprint had turned out not to be a match. I bet it was the other man that was with him, but detectives were still waiting on the DNA sample. Investigators continue to hope that the additional evidence that had collected will lead to a resolution of the case, although repeated searches of the area with dogs trained to sniff for corpses and with metal detectors that could find the metal rod in Leah's legs have failed to discover anything new, because they wrecked the car in a different place than where she would be. I'm sure they're not going to be, especially if he has military training, he's not going to lead them in the right place. And if he was involved, and if that other man might have been involved with him. That's what, to me, one of them sitting on each side of her seems suspicious and frightening. It seems, if they were together, I don't know, that just, it bothers me. Maybe it just bothers me, right? I don't know. And then there's this woman, because I looked through the Jane Does and I couldn't find anyone that fit her description. Maybe I missed them. I don't know. Maybe I should have looked harder. But I did find this one, and this is like, she went missing in 2000, right? And I found this from 2009, and so I don't think it's really her. But when she has long hair, and I looked at the picture next to her and her chin and stuff, and the shape of her face, it kind of looks similar to her, but I don't think it's her. But this would be 9 years later. And this is all the way in Ontario, Canada. So it's all the way across the right side of the map. So there's no way it's going to be her, because it's not even in Canada right there by Washington. It's way over on the right. So this is a Jane Doe. But it seems to me like she might have been in an accident as well, because she had reconstructive surgery of her upper and lower jawbones along with wire sutures. So I don't know if it says they also appear to have been realigned, which would have altered the appearance of her face. So I don't know. And then she had that book. It's a different book. It's not by the same author at all. It says A Long Way Down. So I don't, like I said, I don't think it's her. I think it's just they just have a couple of things in common, because I think something happened to Leah at that time, and I don't think Leah would still be alive now. I think this is just somebody else. So, but since they both had, I don't. She kind of reminded me of her enough that I thought I would include her. That way I have two people in one video, and if somebody doesn't know what happened to Leah, maybe they'll see this person and they'll know who this is. That way I have two of them, and I just saw, there was some things like they both like to read. A lot of us like to read, but I don't know. It was the only one I could find that had any similarities to her at all. So, and then it said the descendant was discovered in a tent in a wooded area near Kenora, Ontario, June 17, 2009. She asphyxiated by inhaling carbon monoxide from the hibachi burner found with her body. They don't know if it was accidental or suicide. And the investigators nicknamed her Millie. But so there's another person, but this person died and nobody knows who it is. And I went through the Jane Does and I was trying to find somebody her height and her weight, And, as I go forward, I found this one, but it doesn't give the weight. So, and she's 23, so in 9 years she would have been 32. So this lady would have been a little bit older than her as well. But I'm keeping her in there because even though it's on the other side of the United States, well, it's all the way to the right of the map. And where Leah went missing was the left of the map. And I think it might have been those two men. I think, that's just my belief. I believe that those two men might have done something to her, that were sitting on both sides of her. And then they probably didn't even think to check her pockets for money or to rob her. But they thought to wreck her vehicle to make it look like she had wrecked. And so, and the one might have panicked to get off the phone because the other one may have been telling him to get off the phone. So, and it was probably just scared after what they did, if it was them two men. But that's what I would think. I think it was more than one person. And that's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong, easily wrong. Maybe it was just one of them, but I think it was more than one person. I think that's why the fingerprint didn't match. I think the fingerprint might have been to the second man, right? So I don't know, but maybe she was talking to them. They found out that she was there alone. She didn't have any family near her. They didn't think anybody would notice her missing, and things like that. So sometimes you give people information and they probably, lied and offered to take her somewhere or to drive her somewhere or to show her something, or maybe they said they needed a ride. Who knows? But you know how people, well, I don't, you know how people can be, because if they want something, they're going to come up with a good lies, and it just seems somebody calling and then panicking on the phone. Why would you panic on the phone if you're being honest? And you're not prepared to tell more information. Maybe they don't want them to show up and ask questions. But I think something happened to her. Of course, it's been a lot of years, so something had to have happened to her. We know that by now. It's been 22 years. If she was alive and okay and well, she would have been seen or heard from since then. And I believe the last time she was seen alive and okay was not at that gas station, but in that restaurant. In that restaurant with those men sitting one on each side of her, I believe that was the last time that she was seen. So that's just, my personal opinion. And I don't know if both men did something or one of the men did something alone, but yeah. I and I don't if they found a fingerprint up under the hood, it doesn't mean it has to be his fingerprint. It could have been somebody else's fingerprint. She could have had somebody look at her vehicle at any time that left a fingerprint under the hood of the car. And he still could have done something and not left the fingerprint. Anyway, what are your thoughts? I'm rambling on about my thoughts, and I probably shouldn't be judging people and making judgments, but she's never been seen since. And I don't believe she was seen at the gas station disoriented. I don't believe he would have panicked if she was actually there and disoriented. I don't. I think that call was just made to cover up their tracks, and that guy panicked after. The only reason he would have panicked, I think, is if he had a reason to panic. So let me know what your thoughts are. I haven't seen any of those shows. Maybe you have. And if you have, maybe you have information. Maybe somebody's been talking over the years and drinking and told you something, and you know something, and maybe you've never told anybody and you've kept it to yourself because you don't know who she was. You heard him talking about a girl, but you didn't know her name, and you heard some of this information. Contact authorities. Let them know. Email them. Give them a call. It's not like you're going to court to testify or anything because it's hearsay. It's just like you're giving them information to help them solve the case, even if you heard it, like I say, through your brother's, uncle's, cousin's, nephew's best friend. Just let them know. Let them know. You don't know if it's true. You heard it through the grapevine. And even you can even say, hey, I don't remember where I heard this, but I remember somebody talking and drinking, and this is what I heard. And give them the information. Let them know. Anyway, because her loved ones, they want closure. They want to find out what happened to her. If they get her remains, um, maybe they can scatter her ashes and have a proper funeral for her because she deserves at least that much. Anyway, and if you know who this other Jane Doe is, who is a couple years older than her, who was in Ontario, Canada, I believe that this is on the right-hand side of the map, where Washington is on the left-hand side of the map near British Columbia. So this one would have been further away, but it doesn't give the hair color or the eye color or anything. But so if you know who this may have been, maybe you could contact authorities and let them know to help solve this case as well. Maybe you have a loved one that was missing and you thought they got reported missing, but maybe the paperwork didn't get processed and they didn't actually get reported missing. And maybe you can let them know, hey, I believe this is his. Oh, yeah, and I did want to mention this too. You remember Elaine Marie Robinson? She went missing, even though she went missing in 2000, right? Leah went missing in 2000. This lady went missing in 1979, Tacoma, Washington. And she was in a Volkswagen and she was camping out. And it said that she just went on vacation to Mount Rainier, Washington area. She had her dog. They were wandering in Sunshine Point area. And you'll see why I'm mentioning this in a second. And it said that somebody ran into her and she was incoherent at the time. And the next day, she and her dog were gone, leaving her belongings in the campsite. Neither her nor her dog was ever located. Neither one of them has ever been located since. She just disappeared off the face of the earth, and they said she was incoherent at the time. That's why I remembered that. I was like, when did that happen? Because I remembered them saying that she had been incoherent, and then poof, she was gone. And so was her dog. And that's what they were saying about Leah. They were saying she was disoriented, incoherent, and poof, then her and her cat is gone. So I found that kind of, to be an interesting coincidence, if you want to call it that. Anyway, like I said, please feel free to leave comments. Let me know what your thoughts are, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye-bye.